Evening, everyone. I hope everybody's having a good Tuesday night. I am hopping on to talk about sleazy Alessi. I'm going to break down the first part of his transcripts that I am able to do because of Kriston T. Harris over at the Rundown Live. He's been dropping transcripts. I broke down Jane Wendo's testimony. It is a little rough. I hope tonight goes a little smoother. Like I said, he is very sleazy. I have not really been keeping up with too much of the articles. I have been following Kriston. I just seen that he gave a couple of updates. I have been thinking, just reading through the transcripts, I have been thinking this man is so sleazy. I believe he knows a lot more. They are trying to really keep it zoned in on Jane Doe 1, Virginia Roberts, and pretty much just he says he remembers too. If you really pay attention, he remembers everything very detailed in the areas that he feels that it does not I feel that does not apply to him, and he just seems to forget, and he's not pushed so far to elaborate on anything that could make him look bad. But I feel regardless, there's plenty in these transcripts that make this man disgusting, and I feel like he should really be on trial, sitting right next to Ghislaine Maxwell in that box. And for whatever reason, they are not pushing this very hard, and I hope that it is for bigger and better things. I asked Kriston if he felt like they were keeping things so hush-hush and so small because they had something secret going on, and he gave a very firm no. And he is actually inside the courtroom, so, he knows the atmosphere, and that's why I asked him specifically. I have invited him on here. I hope that he can find some time to come sit down and let me pick his brain. Anybody that has been inside the courtroom is who I really want to interview because they're in there. They get just more than what we get through the transcripts. I have also seen that the persecution had over 30 witnesses, and a lot of them, including Sarah Colleen, which we know was Ghislaine Maxwell's assistant towards the end of Alessi's employment with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell in 2001. Alessi worked for him from 1990, which, a lot of people think that it is from 1994. But in all reality, he was working for and known Jeffrey Epstein 4 years prior to that. So he has been around for a long time, and I really hope that it is for more. But feels like he definitely knows a lot more. He was definitely involved. I mean, he gives the impression that he knows everything, and he has stated himself that he knows everything that happened in that house. So, and I believe, yeah, you did know, and regardless, you kept your mouth shut. And now they're trying to play it that his job ended here and nothing more. And, he went to pick up 14-year-old Jane Doe 1. He went to do all of that. He picked her up. He took her to the airports. He states himself that her appearance was 14 to 15 years old at the time. So I'm going to. I also wonder what the victims themselves right now are thinking and feeling. The tone of this is just they're trying to keep it very small and very localized. Like two sick individuals were preying on a small group of girls through a massage, and that is true. But there are a lot more high profile names. It's a ring, and they're trying to downplay it. So I am going to read as much as I can and get it out there. I feel like they're letting the victims down, and I really wonder what they're feeling right now. going through my own stuff personally right now. I know what it's like for things to get buried, and a lot of people are questioning why some of them waited so long. I am living proof that it doesn't matter how long you can alert people right away, or you can't, and it can still get buried for whatever reason by very powerful people. And I got my this was over 11 years ago, and about a month ago I got a knock at the door, with people telling me that they have been looking for me for a while. So it's very ongoing and it's very new, and so I really don't have to imagine too much what these ladies feel like. I can kind of imagine and relate to a lot of the areas. Um, and I'm afraid they're downplaying it, and I'm afraid by the end of this they're just going to be very disappointed, and I hope that's not the case. I feel like instead of setting one tone, they're setting a tone for victims everywhere, and it's kind of scary because it's kind of setting the tone that this is what we're going to put up with, and speaking really it doesn't make that big of a ripple. And this is the big ripple we could be making. So I am going to read through Alessi's. This is part one. I'm going to read through it, and just keep in mind like how he seems to just conveniently forget things. It's absolutely nuts. So, like I said, Mr. Alessi started actually working back in 1990 for Jeffrey Epstein. He was previously working for Mr. Wexner's mother and was actually referred to Jeffrey Epstein by a Mr. Meister. I'm unclear on who he is. I would like to know. He referred Mr. Alessi. Mr. Alessi came on in 1990. He was doing reservations. He rented a place, a house, from 1990 to 91. After that, Mr. Alessi Jeffrey Epstein asked Mr. Alessi to come solely work for him. So from 1991 to 2001, Mr. Alessi solely worked for Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. Alessi did not meet Ghislaine Maxwell until 91. He spent 4 years from 91 to 94. He spent the time renovating the Palm Beach house in Florida. He arrived from New Jersey in 80. He arrived from New Jersey to Florida in 84. So 1991, Jay asked Alessi to work for him only full time. He was in charge of running the house. So he went from renovating, which kind of makes me think, like, as far as the cameras and the audio go, you're renovating the house. He just knows way more. And just my opinion, I feel like he is just that creepy guy that crept outside the doors, or maybe even watched the cameras. I don't know. And I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one. I've seen an update by Kristan where people are just calling him creepy, and I'm glad I'm not the only one, because he's just a really creepy guy. So after the renovations were done to the Palm Beach house in 94, he became kind of in charge of running the house at that point. After 3 years of running the house, his wife actually came in. At this time, they were actually living in the house, the Palm Beach house. So after 3 years of Alessi working there, his wife then lived in and moved with Jeffrey Epstein to work for him. The staff house they talk about was built in between 1990 and 2000, and that's where then all the employees would that was their staff house. From the time Ghislaine Maxwell came in, she started giving instructions on the duties. Like I said, he met her in 1991. interacted on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein passed instructions to GM. GM would relay to Alessi. Alessi states GM was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, the lady of the house. From the day Ghislaine came in, she took over right away. Um, it was either Jeffrey Epstein in charge. If it wasn't, then Ghislaine was. Um, the only speak when spoken to. They go into the no contact, which I just think is complete bull. Even if it was, he knew enough still. He's seen, and by the time we get done with these transcripts, you will see that just because the doors were closed, this man was fully aware of what was happening in that house. Um, he was in charge of the cleanliness of the house, prepare the sheets, prepare the guest rooms. Ghislaine was at the Palm Beach house 90% of the time. Describes this on page 14 to 24. They pretty much go into describing every detail of this house. Like, he has shown pictures, but you know, just the way he talks, he remembers so much. I mean, he worked from 90 to 2001. I bet you he remembers every inch of that house. He was in charge of that house. He ran that house. He One thing I wanted to point out, that the master bathrooms connects Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein bedrooms. Alessi's room was on the other side of the house. Um, Ghislaine stays in. Alessi states that GM stays in Jeffrey's room from 91 when he first met Ghislaine to 2001 when Alessi left. Ghislaine had her own desk in the Palm Beach house. Many females over the years, about 75 to 80% of them are always topless. Seen girls well over hundreds of times at Palm Beach house, he states. Girls would be in main house by the pool. He has been to the Zorro Ranch in 1994 or 95. He didn't quite remember that. Picked up by ranch manager, went into the main house. He states that Jeffrey Epstein owns houses in the Caribbean, the St. James house, the house in New York City, which Alessi says that he's never visited. He has a house in Paris, France, and what's interesting is the Columbus, Ohio, which is literally like 45 minutes to an hour from me. It's crazy. He says that Alessi says he's never flown on the private planes, flew once with them on a small plane called the Hawker to an engagement in Miami. He visited the island for about 2 hours, does not remember the date, which I find it oddly convenient that he is just so specific and he remembers all these details, and for some reason he can't. And what makes it worse is he was there. He states that it was a cruise for him and his wife that they were on, and they just so happened to stop off for about 2 hours, but he can't remember that date for some reason, and I want to know why. I feel like out of all the things that you remember here, I think that would be something that he would remember. I want to know why that was conveniently forgotten. He visited Ghislaine's townhouse in London for about 5 minutes. Starts talking about the handbook of rules. Now keep in mind, this is not the same. The book that he has in front of him during the trial is not the same book that he would have been in control of. But he says, oh no, this is the employee book. Sorry, my bad. Page 35 is the employee. We'll get to the other book. In there, he says, do not tell guests personal problems, anticipate needs of Jeffrey Epstein, say nothing, hear nothing, answer when asked. He's supposed to be dumb and deaf and say nothing of their lies. Now, these are his specific words. Say nothing of their lies. He knew. He knew. There's no way that he could not know. This is the book, the directory. So we've heard about the flight list. We've heard about the black book. We've heard about the audio videotapes that the blackmail, the surveillance throughout his house. And we've heard about now this directory. And then there is a Rolodex that we will hear about. And I feel between the audio tapes, in these little directories that were inside this house, is a very good big chunk of evidence. It is not so circumstantial, and can provide a lot of useful information if we were trying to take down a major sex ring operation network, whatever you want to call it, that spreads worldwide. So the Galene Jeffrey telephone directory. Alessi states, book of hundreds and hundreds of names, numbers, directions, and addresses. Friends, family, businesses of Jeffrey and Galene. Jeffrey and Galene directory is placed by the phones. Galene had an office on the first floor in the garden room. Emmy Taylor traveled constantly. She was Ghislaine Maxwell's assistant. Chefs traveled with GM and Jeffrey Epstein. Sarah Clean, which is the one that just now I'm seeing in the updates, she pled the fifth. She's one of the 30 witnesses that pled the fifth because they were not offered immunity, which makes me think maybe there is something bigger at play here. But that's just not the atmosphere that the people that I'm getting. So Sarah Colleen, assistant towards the end of Alessi working for Jeffrey and Galene, Sarah took over the phones and scheduling the massage. So she pretty much came in and took over Alessi's job and everything that he did. Alessi names pilots Vazowski and Rogers, asked about how many underage girls there appeared to be. He says he only conveniently remembers 2. And he remembers their names. And funny, it's Jane 1 and Virginia Roberts. Met Jane 1 first through Galene Maxwell. Appeared to be about 14, 15 years old. Jane 1 appeared to be 14, 15 years old is what was Jane 1. Jane 1 came, now that he says Jane 1 came 3 times, Jane's mom, he says Jane 1's mother came to the house 3 times before she was alone. But Jane 1 says it was only once. Either way, this 14, 15-year-old girl came without her mother, and he was the one that picked her up. And sometimes his wife even went to go pick her up. So he remembers this. Yeah, he remembers this, but he doesn't remember the date of his wife's cruise, is what I wanted to point out. Like, he remembers all these details, and I just really wonder why he conveniently doesn't remember that date. After Jane 1 would come by herself, Alessi would go pick her up, told by Jeffrey Epstein or Galene Maxwell to pick her up. Picked her up from School of Arts in Palm Beach, he says once. Wife picked up Jane 1 a few times. Alessi picked up dozens and dozens of people from airports and homes. Who? He's not asked at this point to elaborate on any of that. I want to know who. Saw Jane 1 at Jeffrey's Palm Beach house with luggage. Drove Jane 1 to airports where Jeffrey Epstein, Galene Maxwell, Jane 1, and other guests. says Emmy Taylor, Jeffrey, and Glenn and chefs. Confirms that Jane 1 went to the movies with Jeffrey, Glenn, Emmy Taylor, and the guest. I'm assuming it was Gwendolyn Beck because asked where there were there always other females around. Alessi says yes. Asked if there were women when Jane 1 comes around. Yes, Emmy Taylor, Gwendolyn Beck. He conveniently cannot recall anyone else. Jane 1 would arrive through the kitchen. He would take her to Ghislaine Maxwell. He makes a very, very good point to say this is where his job stops. So that's interesting because he was a man of many jobs, a sleazy man of many jobs. He facilitated upcoming travel plans mainly with GM, sometimes Fiona or Kimberly from New York. And I will have a list of every single name that I have heard, and then when I'm done going through all the transcripts and all that, I will release that information. First saw Virginia Roberts at Mar-a-Lago in 2001 for spa. Alessi and Ghislaine at the time went around to other main luxurious spas and country clubs. Alessi states that he waits in the car. And then at the Mar-a-Lago, GM gets out of the car, goes over to the ramp, talks to a young-looking girl in a nurse uniform, which is known to be Virginia Roberts. GM comes back, gets in the car, and they leave. About 5 or 6 p.m. the same day, Alessi sees her again at the Palm Beach house. Funny how he remembers all of this. He is just dripping in information, and it just gets worse from here. He was shown Virginia Roberts' picture to confirm. At the Palm Beach house, often after that, says never told why she was there, which Alessi knew why they were there. Alessi knew why they were he knew they were underage. He knew everything. Alessi said she appeared to be 14 to 15 years old. Virginia Roberts came with her boyfriend a few times. Alessi picked her up sometimes, instructed by Jeffrey or Ghislaine. Boyfriend came into the kitchen once, and immediately he was sent out to the car to wait. And after that, he was told to never ever let him into the house, into the anywhere. He had to wait in the car. When Alessi first started working for Jeffrey, he was getting 1 massage per day to 3 times a day when he left work for Jeffrey Epstein. Different people would massage Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine and Jeffrey, or even New York office, would call Alessi to schedule these. Funny. Alessi gets called to schedule these massages. They were at all times of the day, morning, afternoon, after the movies, around 10, 11 p.m. You know, the movies where Jane 1, Ghislaine, Jeffrey, and guests would go to almost every night, he says. So then we get to the directories. They go back to the directories. Copies in both Jeffrey and Ghislaine's bedroom, nightstands, kitchen by the phone, Ghislaine's 1 desk, and Jeffrey Epstein's 3 desks in the house. Jane 1's name was located in this directory. Alessi says appears to be 14 to 15 years old. Now, this is not the same directory that he would have the one that this is what I was talking about earlier. This directory is not physically the one that Alessi had during the time that he worked with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think they try to make it a big point to separate the two, to disassociate him with this current one in front of him. But he talks about them being updated 1 to 2 times a year, contacts added, never taken away. So to me, regardless of when this book was made. It has the same names that were in that book that Alessi, in fact, Alessi looked over the current book the whole night before. He says he looked at it from, I mean, they take the time to go through page by page by page by page by page, saying, do you recognize this page? Do you recognize this page? Do you recognize this page? So a lot of, I mean, the names would be the same. So I really think it's irrelevant when this, but they tried. And I think in the process, they just proved that it really doesn't matter. States that there were many, 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 many names in the directory for massage in Palm Beach. States that this is a later version, but the same information. There's a 15-minute break and an argument back and forth on why it's important for them to make it known that they're two separate books, which they allow. Alessi's not in. I mean, they just make a point to say that Alessi's name is not in this one. Wife's name's not in this one. He is asked if Sarah Kellen is in the book. Alessi answers no, was asked to look again. Her name was actually in the book. Mind you, again, earlier he says, and they made clear he looked at the directory extensively the night before, went page by page earlier in the transcript. This version was later made between 2004 and 2005, which would, if Alessi left in 2001, would make sense that it was updated. He remembers very specifically and very vaguely, though, back page, front cover specifically is where the date was. My point is, no matter when the books were updated, they would have had the same context updated to the 2004-5 version. We're on page 99, does say books were taken to Kinko's to be reprinted. So they made a big point to say, like, the text is small, it's a different font, the book you had was thicker, trying to, I really don't understand what they were trying to prove. Alessi has already stated that contacts were updated, never removed. So it would have been the same names. I just think they tried to show on page 102 is tried to dissociate him from the book. Now keep in mind as we go through this next part, Alessi has stated throughout to have memory issues around very crucial topics that seem to pertain more to him, yet has shown, and by his own admissions, that his memory is actually really, really freaking good. He is just a really sleazeball, in my opinion. This is where it talks more deeply about the massages. It was in the Palm Beach house, 98% female. First timers would come through the front entrance. Repeat visits would come through the kitchen, always. Alessi would let Jeffrey and Galene know. They would tell him to set it up in the bathroom, pool, or different locations in the house, mainly bedroom. What I want to know is, when you were setting up these rooms for these 14 to 15-year-old girls that you said appeared to be, did you also put the dildos that you would later find and we will talk about? Did you put those in the rooms too? That's what I want to know, because he took them out. So did he put them in there? They never made that clear. I was just wondering. So they would go tell him. Okay, yeah, they would go. They would pretty much just go tell him to set it all up. And I wonder if they included everything, but he was never asked if he, as of right now, in part one, he was never asked if that included the dildos that he would be taking out later. Alessi answers the phone, receives the messages, asks who's calling, takes down the telephone numbers. And he also states that sometimes his wife or Taylor, which I'm assuming is Emmy Taylor, would sometimes do that too. It was like they describe it is like a little carbon copy, you write on top and then you have the carbon copy underneath, a little notepad. When they were full, it had like 4 pages. They were kept in a closet when full. So now we have heard of the carbon. We have heard of the the flight plan, the black book, the directory, the suspicious audio videotapes, maybe videotapes, the blackmail tapes, and now we hear about the directory, and now we are talking about the message book that he would take down appointments and messages. He was the one that answered these phones, that set up these massage appointments, that went and picked Jane and sometimes Virginia up, who he says appears to be 14 to 15 years old, take them to Jeffrey Epstein's Palm Beach house for a massage appointment. So these are the so what I want to know is, after he says that they were full, they would go into a closet. Did they find those? I want to know if they found those when they raided the place. I want to know where those are at. Alessi acknowledges his handwriting, his wife's, trying to make it seem like it was just a normal part of his job. Yes, but again, I really feel like he's a key person here, and I hope that if they do decide to take this further, that he plays a very big part of that. And I hope that the victims just come out not feeling like the lost here, that they lost. That's all I can ever. It makes you really, it sets a tone, that's for sure. Honestly, I think all victims, if your abuser was Jeffrey Epstein, associated with Jeffrey Epstein, I think that they all should start dropping hashtag victim of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, sex trafficking ring. I'm a victim, however you want to put it, but start dropping it. I mean, as they want to push it under the rug, we need to try to force them and keep them from being able to shove that under the rug. And the more people that speak up and speak out, it can't go unnoticed. So again, he says he tries to make it seem like it's a normal part of his job, like it's just everyday work, which if it was a normal person who didn't prey on young children, it would be. But it's not. He conveniently says that he does not recognize any other names written in there. The book does not reflect some dates, and so they mention, so the book doesn't reflect some dates though, and he shrugs, probably. That is the most vague, and like, he would know that. He tries. Seems to have gotten a little defensive from reading it, if you ask me. I believe fully he's made it very clear previously that he made it very clear who writes the messages. It's him, his wife, or sometimes Taylor. So he knows very well who the signature, I believe that he would know very well that handwriting. Alessi says it is due to transfer through many, many notepads, is why he wouldn't know the handwriting. But Alessi comes back and says, no, it was just one pad at a time. So they try to play it off as so anyone could have came written on them. But like I said earlier, Alessi made it pretty clear who wrote them. Alessi states Ghislaine buys the oils or perfumes for massages. He puts they're put on top of the dresser in Jeffrey Epstein's bedroom. Alessi says he was never in the massage rooms during a massage, door never opened. Alessi would go in afterwards and retrieve massage table to put in the closet in the bedroom. During 1994 to 2002, 2001, Alessi would clean massage towels up after new masseuses. Returning masseuses would be repeats. They would bring the towels to him. So afterwards, 14-year-old Jane One would bring him towels. Alessi, that he went to pick up. I mean, he was heavily involved. Whether those doors were closed or not, he knew exactly what was going on and what he was sending these little girls in there to do. There's no way around that. Alessi cleans the massage room, puts the oils away, wipes down the tables. He does all of this. So after they get done in there, doing whatever he says he has no clue they're doing behind these closed doors, he goes in and cleans it all up. It's disgusting. He knew. So then between the years of 1995 and 1998, that's what gets me the most. A big part of this has been, they make a big deal of hearsay and memory. And here you completely see Alessi getting away with it during crucial times. And I'm hoping that, and from what I'm seeing in the second part, I hope that he doesn't get away with too much. But like I said, the feels around the whole trial in general has been one big letdown. And I hope that I can come back and put my foot in my mouth and they actually do something. But that's just not what we're getting. So between the years of 1995 and 1998, he remembers finding a big dildo with two heads. He would put on gloves, clean them, and put them in Ghislaine Maxwell's closet in a basket. It was kept there all the time. Ask how he knows, Alessi states, I knew everything that happened in that house. Remembers everything about this wicker basket. Alessi saw pornographic tapes, and a leather costume. Alessi's seen the dildo 4 to 5 times. He also talks about the massager Jane One talked about. 2 massagers kept by the oils and perfumes in Jeffrey Epstein's bathroom. Many, many, many topless girls take pictures taken by the poolside by Ghislaine Maxwell. So that is on page 124. And the last few pages and going into it, around 2001 when Alessi ended his employment with Jeffrey Epstein, they try to paint him as this sick, old, running out of money, trying to retire old man who had no other choice, he felt, but to break into Jeffrey Epstein's house, not once, but twice, and steal money from him. Jeffrey Epstein seen him on the cameras, confronted him, called it a loan. Alessi paid it back, but not without Jeffrey Epstein pushing a little bit of power and have him talking. Alessi states that he talked to some officials about it. I want to know who they were so bad, because my opinion is old Mr. Alessi tried to take a chapter out of blackmail Epstein and try to blackmail Jeffrey Epstein. He has all this information over the years that he worked with Jeffrey Epstein from 1990 to 2001. He's seen everything. Like he stated, there is nothing in that house that happened that he didn't know about. He knew everything. He was the one taking the messages. He was the one writing them down. He was the one writing down names. He was the one writing down numbers, addresses, setting up massage. He would go into this directory. And now, remember, Jane 1 says there was this directory that they would go in, and there was a professional masseuse that would come in. So in this directory are all these potential victims, for starters, and in this directory are all these people that could be complicit. And I think it's very important to the trial. I think it's very important. I think that is very important. I think those message pads, the directory, the audio tapes. I really think that the Black Book and the flight plan are very circumstantial, unless victims, which I hope they do, come forward. But the audio tapes and the directories and all that, very personal, would be a much better source at providing a very good, solid look into who's complicit. I know that they know exactly who the people that are supposed to protect us. They know exactly who, why we're out here fighting about all of these names. They know, and the question is, what are they going to do about it? Because, as I've stated, I don't have to imagine what these girls feel. I know. And if you ask me, in order to fight back, we need to come up with a way to bring attention to every single one of you. Come speak to me. I would gladly sit here and listen, and we can talk about it. Like I said, I am going through my own. I understand what it's like to get things pushed down and buried by disgusting, powerful monsters. For whatever reason they deem it's right. I understand what it feels like to go tell the right people and think you're completely safe in telling those people, and then those people taking it and burying it down so deep. It doesn't matter how long you waited, because I told immediately and it still got buried for about 10, 11 years, up until about a month ago, when somebody came knocking on my door saying that they had been looking for me for a long time. And I don't have to imagine the feelings you felt when that day came for you. If you want my opinion, I think every single one of you out there that has an abuser that is related to Jeffrey Epstein should go live and simply say, I am a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking network, or hashtag it. We start dropping those people a notice. That is all I have for you. I will be so excited to go over part 2 with you. I mean, as excited as I get saying that they're going to tear this man apart, from the things that I do read, I can see that it's just going to be a big letdown. I am just here to tell you every single grimy detail that are coming straight from the transcripts. I want it out there. More people should be doing this and putting it out there. Take your bullet points and write them down and talk about what you think people need to know inside the transcripts. You can find them all at Kriston T. Harris's website, The Rundown Live, or go to his Facebook page and follow him. He is in the courtroom. I know it's wrapping up, but go back and read through the transcripts. Do what I'm doing. Get information and start speaking. Because they can't silence everybody if we speak at once, especially the victims. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that that we can take this in and make it spotlighted. I will continue to put the spotlight on it. Anybody out there with the murdered or missing, and especially related to sex trafficking, you don't know where this ends. We just know where it begins. And they're just I wouldn't even say that they're scratching the surface. So I have no hopes that they are going to take this any further. So we need people to speak. We need people to start spotlighting this situation, this sex trafficking network globally. It doesn't matter where you are. If you feel that you pertain to this, then you do. And we should be speaking up. So I am Ashwa's TC Spotlight. I will be on my own episode, Buried Justice. I will go a little bit, as much as I can, into the details surrounding my case that is happening. So I fully understand what it's like to not be able to tell everything. Going through what I'm going through, I haven't told anybody. There are the facility that knows and buried it. There is the lawyer a few years later that was very awesome in helping me find out as much information I can about what they did to me. And these people now, besides my very close friends and family, I have not talked about it in years because I always prayed and I always hoped that somebody would come knock at my door, and that day came. And so I will, I'm calling out other victims. I will be on here talking about as much as I can about my situation and what happened. So again, I understand, I get it, and it does happen, and it needs to change. This could change laws all the way down to CPS that gear towards after the fact when they should be geared towards prevention. And it could change a lot of things and set a tone. And the tone they're setting now is for every victim that comes forward, it's not going to matter, and that needs to change. So that is what everybody should think about. This pertains to everybody, no matter where you are. So you guys have a good night. I will be back on for part 2. I am going through it now slowly, and I'm writing everything down, and we will do exactly what we've been doing. You guys have a good Tuesday night, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe.